The clinking of glasses echoed through the reception hall, but I barely heard it. My sister's voice had already cut through the music and chatter like a blade. To the happy couple who never did mind a little dirt under their nails, Lindsay said with a smile so sweet it hurt to look at. Laughter rippled across the room, and I felt like the floor beneath me shifted. My cheeks burned. Every eye seemed to find me and Tyler. I forced myself to smile, even though all I wanted to do was disappear under the table. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, our wedding. Instead, I felt like I was on display at a zoo, and the crowd had come to stare at the strange woman who'd chosen to marry a farmer instead of someone who wore suits and drove a BMW. My name is Rachel, and growing up, I was the quiet one. Not the straight-A star student like Lindsay or the peacemaker like our youngest sister Megan. I was just there. The one who liked being outdoors, who didn't care for shopping trips or gossip, who found comfort in planting things and watching them grow. And apparently, that made me the family oddball. I could feel my mom's hand press against my arm, her nails digging in gently. "Smile, Rachel," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "Don't make this a thing." I turned toward her, wondering if she even realized what she was asking. My sister had just mocked me in front of 200 people on my wedding day, and I was the one who needed to act right? Across the table, Tyler slipped his hand into mine under the linen cloth. His fingers were rough from work, but his touch was calm, steady. "They don't get us," he said quietly. "But we know what matters." I nodded and squeezed his hand back. Tyler had been up that very morning fixing a broken irrigation pipe. He came in from the fields, washed up, and showed up for our wedding with dirt still under his nails. And you know what? I loved him for it. Because he wasn't pretending. He didn't know how to fake a smile or say something he didn't mean. He was real in a way no one else in that ballroom would ever understand. I looked over at Lindsay. She sat at the head table, her husband Derek beside her in a sharp gray suit, laughing like they'd just won something. Lindsay always looked polished, perfect, Manhattan job, designer clothes, the life that our parents could brag about at dinner parties. And there I was, sitting in my grandmother's wedding dress, altered twice to make it fit, wondering how it was that I became the embarrassment in a family that prided itself on looking polished. Megan slid into the empty seat beside me. "Don't let her get to you," she whispered. "Mom's been popping heartburn pills all week. They all think you're throwing your life away." Great. Good to know where everyone stands. I didn't mean it like that. I think you and Tyler are kind of inspiring, actually. It's just hard for them to understand a different kind of success. I looked at her, trying to decide whether I should be offended or thankful. Before I could say anything, our dad stood up and grabbed the microphone. "I'd like to say a few words," he announced. The room hushed. I suddenly wanted to sink under the table. "Rachel's always marched to her own beat," he began, and I knew where this was going. While Lindsay was building her career in finance and Megan was finding her path, Rachel chose something different. A simpler life. That word again. Simple. It felt like a label more than a compliment. "She's marrying Tyler," Dad continued, nodding toward my husband. "A man who works with his hands, who understands the value of hard work. We wish them happiness in their life together." The applause was short. Polite. I didn't know whether to cry or stand up and leave. When I turned to Tyler, he just smiled and whispered, "Nice of him to say we're not totally doomed." I let out a breath and tried to laugh, but it stuck in my throat. My dad's speech didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like a funeral for all the things they thought I'd never be. And maybe I was done trying to prove anything to them. I pushed back my chair. It scraped across the floor loud enough to make a few heads turn. I lifted my glass, water, not champagne, because I wasn't about to waste good bubbles on this crowd, and looked straight at Lindsay. "To family," I said, keeping my voice even. "And to finding out who really has your back when it counts." There was a small pause. Lindsay's smile flickered, just for a second, before she raised her glass along with everyone else. But something had changed. I felt it. Maybe no one else did, but I did. Tyler leaned in and whispered, "That's my girl." 3 years passed. We were standing in Lindsay's foyer, which was so spotless it could have been a magazine photo shoot. I held a glass casserole dish, One of the few homemade things on the catered buffet. Tyler stood beside me, calm as always, while I wondered why we'd agreed to come. Rachel. My mom called from the back patio. We were just talking about the house Derek bought in the Hamptons. Isn't it lovely? I smiled tightly and followed the sound of laughter and clinking wine glasses to the patio, where everyone looked like they were playing some kind of part in a commercial for expensive soap. Lindsay floated toward us in a white summer dress. "Oh, you brought something," she said, eyeing the dish like it might explode. "That's thoughtful." "Green bean casserole," I replied. "From our garden." Derek appeared beside her, drink in hand. "Is it organic or just basic?" I stared at him, unsure if he was joking. But the way the group chuckled told me it wasn't really a question. Tyler stepped in calmly. "Homegrown. We know where every seed came from." There was that pause again, the way people do when they're deciding whether to laugh or pretend they didn't hear. Then Lindsay giggled, that same rehearsed sound. "Well, I suppose that's one kind of success. Although Derek just closed a deal last week worth more than your little farm probably makes in a decade." "Actually," I said, trying not to let my voice crack, "the farm's been profitable for 2 years running." Lindsay laughed again. "That's adorable." I felt Tyler's hand brush mine, grounding me. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was tired. Tired of always being the punchline. Tired of people acting like we were strange bugs under glass. Just then my dad walked over, glass of bourbon in hand. "When are you planning to do something bigger with your life?" he asked. "Something more substantial?" "Donald," my mom warned. But I could see she was listening carefully too. Tyler said, "We're happy. The work is honest. We sleep well at night." "Honest work," Derek repeated. "Sounds noble. But watching you two at these things feels like a nature documentary. You know, here we see the farmers in their native habitat." More laughter. But not as loud this time. People were starting to feel the awkwardness. "At least we sleep well at night," I said before I could stop myself. That shut the laughter down. Lindsay's face froze. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. "Nothing," I replied quickly. "Just that real work makes you tired." Mom jumped in, trying to change the subject. "Let's all go look at the new pool house." As the crowd drifted away, Tyler leaned close. "I need some air. Going to check the truck." "I'll come with you," I said. "No. Stay. Enjoy your family." There was a weight in the way he said enjoy that didn't need explaining. I stayed by the pool, watching the water shimmer under the sunlight, listening to the sounds of money and success drift from the pool house. "You okay?" Megan asked, coming over with 2 glasses of wine. "This is just how they are." "It's not right," she said. "But things have been tense lately. Derek's in trouble with some investments. Big trouble." That got my attention. "What kind of trouble?" I probably shouldn't say anything. "Megan, please." She hesitated. "Tamara's been hinting they might need help. Financial help." I didn't know what to feel, shock, pity, maybe even a little satisfaction. But I said nothing and took a slow sip of my wine. Then I heard Lindsay's voice again, calling me back to the group. "Rachel, come settle something for us." I set down my glass and turned to face them, already bracing myself. I walked over slowly, not in any hurry to get dragged into another one of Lindsay's social games. She stood in the middle of the group, all polished confidence and flawless makeup, the queen of the patio. "We were just talking about career choices," she said as I joined them. "And I mentioned how proud we all are of you for finding your, niche." The way she said it made it sound like I'd chosen to become a street magician instead of run a business. She turned to the group. Not everyone could handle the mental demands of, what do you call it again, Rachel? Sustainable backyard farming. The laughter came right on cue. A few polite chuckles. One guy snorted into his drink. I felt the heat rising in my face, but I didn't look away. I just smiled, calm and steady. "I mean," she continued, "don't you ever wonder what you might have accomplished if you'd pushed yourself a little more? Instead of settling for this life." I could have said a lot of things. I could have asked her how she defined success, or whether endless anxiety and 6-figure debt made her feel powerful. But I didn't. I just said, "Real life does happen, Lindsay. And sometimes it doesn't look the way you thought it would." The conversation died after that. People suddenly remembered they had places to be, refilling drinks, checking phones, wandering off toward the pool. Even Lindsay didn't reply. She just gave me a tight smile and turned away. 6 months later, I started noticing little things. Missed calls from my parents. Short, strange conversations where nobody seemed quite sure what to say. Mom would always brush me off when I asked about Lindsay and Derek. They're doing fine, she'd say, just busy. Then change the subject. It wasn't until Megan's birthday dinner that someone finally told me the truth. We met at a small Italian place, nothing fancy, which already felt off. Fancy was kind of our family default. They're in trouble, Megan said after a long silence, eyes down on her plate. Define trouble. Derek's investment firm. He made some bad calls. Big ones. They're trying to keep it quiet, but they're bleeding money. Tamara had to sell the beach house. They might lose their main home. I didn't know how to respond. A weird, fluttery feeling stirred in my chest. Not quite joy, not quite sadness. Some messy mix of both. It wasn't satisfying. But it wasn't heartbreaking either. Have they asked you for anything? No. Probably because they know I couldn't help even if I wanted to. She hesitated. Have they called you? Not a word. We both fell quiet for a while. Tyler didn't say anything either, but I could feel him watching me across the table. He knew. He always knew when I was turning something over in my head. Later that week, we were out in the field picking tomatoes when my phone rang. Unknown number. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered. Rachel? It's your mother. Her voice sounded thinner than usual. Less composed. Hi, Mom. Everything okay? We're fine. I mean, we're managing. I was wondering, could you and Tyler come by this weekend? There's something we need to talk about. As a family. I didn't ask what it was. I already knew. Sure. Saturday okay? Yes. Around 2. Just you and Tyler, please. She hung up before I could say more. I lowered the phone and looked over at Tyler. He was still sorting tomatoes but had clearly heard every word. Family meeting, he asked. Yup. Let me guess. They're going to ask us for money. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the years I'd spent biting my tongue, playing along at holidays, being the odd one out. They never asked about our farm unless it was to make a joke. They never wanted to know how we were really doing. And now they were going to come and ask us to give something up. The same something they never respected in the first place. Saturday came gray and cold. Tyler didn't talk much during the drive. His hands were steady on the wheel, but I could tell his jaw was tight. Whatever they ask, he said as we pulled into the driveway, remember, you don't owe them anything. I know. He looked at me. Do you really? I think I do now. The house I grew up in looked smaller than I remembered. Still neat, still perfect, but somehow hollow. As we walked up the steps, I got a text. Unknown number. Emergency family meeting. Please come. We need you. It was from Lindsay. I slipped the phone into my pocket and rang the doorbell. Inside, everyone was already seated. It was like walking into a courtroom. My parents on the couch, Lindsay on the armchair, Derek standing stiff by the window. Megan sat alone, looking like she didn't want to be there either. Thanks for coming, Dad said. Have a seat. We sat. The room was dead quiet. No one made small talk. So, I said, breaking the silence. What's this about? Mom twisted her wedding ring around her finger, like she used to do when I was a kid, and she was nervous. We're facing some difficulties, she said. Financial ones, Dad added. Derek made some investments that didn't work out. That's one way to say it, Derek muttered. Lindsay shot him a warning look but stayed quiet. How bad? Tyler asked, voice calm. We could lose the house. The retirement savings. Everything, Mom said. I nodded slowly. I'm sorry to hear that. Truly. But why are you telling us? Lindsay leaned forward. Because we need your help. Dad didn't wait. We need you to sell the farm. I blinked. Excuse me? It's the only asset in the family not tied up in this mess. If you sell, we can pay off the debts. Start fresh. I felt Tyler's hand on mine, strong and steady. You want us to sell our home? The business we built. It's just land, Derek said, his voice sharp. You can buy another one. My breath caught. He couldn't be serious. Tyler stood up slowly. We should go. Wait, Mom said. Please. Just think about it. We need an answer by Monday. I turned toward them, shaking. You want us to destroy everything we've worked for? For you. After years of mocking us, ignoring us, telling us we were wasting our lives. And now we're your backup plan? It's not like that, Lindsay said. It is exactly like that. I grabbed my purse. Rachel. Dad called after me. Don't forget what we've done for you. Tyler paused at the door. What have you done for us exactly? Besides judge us? Nobody answered. We drove home in silence. I stared out the window, watching the fields pass by. The fields they wanted us to trade for their second chance. When we got home, Tyler didn't go inside right away. He turned toward the barn. Come with me. There's something I need to show you. I followed him, confused. He led me to his office and pulled open a drawer I'd never seen him touch. Sit down. He laid out folders. Thick ones. Tyler, what is this? He didn't speak. He just opened the first file. Inside were patent documents. Legal ones. With his name on them. This is the irrigation system I built from scrap. I patented it 3 years ago. It's being used across the Midwest now. I flipped through page after page. More patents, software licenses, financials. You've been running a company? Stone AgTech. Quietly. I didn't want to say anything until I knew it was real. Our farm isn't just a farm. It's a testing site. My head spun. You let them think we were just farmers. I wanted to see how they treated us when they thought we had nothing. I couldn't speak. Couldn't even look at him. There's more, he said softly. Derek bet against us. Literally. He shorted our company's stock. With your family's money. I looked up. He lost everything gambling on our failure. Before I could even absorb that, my phone buzzed again. Text from Megan. They're coming to the farm tomorrow. All of them. Dad says they won't take no for an answer. I showed it to Tyler. He just nodded. Let them come. They showed up at exactly 2 o'clock the next day. 3 cars rolling up our dirt driveway like some kind of corporate delegation. I watched from the kitchen window as dust settled on their polished tires and glossy paint. Dad got out first, looking as stiff as ever. Lindsay stepped out next, a leather folder tucked under her arm. Derek adjusted his collar like he was late to a boardroom meeting, not standing outside a modest farmhouse. Even their daughter, little Sophie, was there, dressed like she'd been plucked straight out of a catalog. They're here, I said quietly. Tyler didn't respond. He was already straightening his shirt, the same cotton button-down he always wore. He hadn't dressed up, not even a little. That was intentional. He wanted to meet them exactly as he was. There was a loud knock on the door, crisp and impatient. My dad's knock. I opened it and stepped aside without a word. They came in like they owned the place. Nobody smiled. Nobody commented on the familiar photos on the walls, or the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. They scanned the room like they were evaluating the resale value. We need to talk, Dad said. Sure, Tyler replied. Have a seat. We'll stand, Derek said quickly, already opening the folder Lindsay had brought. This won't take long. He laid the documents out on our coffee table, like we were signing a lease agreement. I leaned over and saw what it was, property sale contracts. They'd already filled in our names. All we had to do was sign. You had our land appraised? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Dad cleared his throat. We were just preparing. We didn't want to waste time. Tyler's mouth twitched at that, just a little. Efficient. Derek tapped the folder. It's a good deal. You'll walk away with enough to start over somewhere else. Somewhere else, I repeated. It's not like you're tied to this place, Lindsay said, her voice a little too cheerful. You can farm anywhere. Sophie tugged on Derek's sleeve. Daddy, what's happening? Nothing, sweetheart, he said quickly. The grown-ups are just talking. About family, Mom added. About how family helps each other. I felt it then. That same guilt they always used. The kind that made me second-guess myself even when I knew better. Then Tyler stood. "You're right," he said. "Family should help each other." Relief washed over Mom's face. "Exactly. That's what we've been trying to say. And that's why we need to be honest with each other," Tyler continued. He walked over to his desk and grabbed the same manila folder from last night. "We want you to understand what this farm actually is." Derek rolled his eyes. "We don't have time for a lecture, Tyler. We need an answer." "You'll get one," Tyler said. "But first tell me, what would you say this land is worth?" Derek shrugged. "I don't know. 200-300 grand, maybe. It's not prime property." Tyler nodded. "Interesting. What if I told you it's the research hub for a company valued at 50 million? Silence. Not polite silence. The kind that drops like a stone. "What are you talking about?" Lindsay asked, her voice suddenly small. Tyler opened the folder and pulled out the first patent document. "This is for the irrigation system I built. Filed 3 years ago. It's now used in 12 states. He laid another one down. "This is for the predictive soil software I developed. It's licensed nationally." One after another, he placed document after document on the table. Patents. Licensing contracts. Legal papers. All with his name. "We've been building this company, Stone AgTech, for years," he said. "We used this land to test everything." My parents stared, mouths slightly open. Mom reached out, touched one of the documents like she wasn't sure if it was real. You're the CEO?" Dad asked. Tyler nodded. "And I have a PhD in agricultural engineering. From MIT. Lindsay sank into the armchair, her eyes not leaving the papers. "That's not possible," Derek muttered. "Oh, but it is," Tyler said. "In fact, you should know. You invested against us." Derek's head snapped up. "You told your clients, including Rachel's parents, to short our company's stock." Lindsay's eyes went wide. "You what?" "Derek thought anything related to farming was a joke," Tyler continued. "He assumed our company would crash." I didn't know it was yours," Derek stammered. "And that's the problem," Tyler said, his voice quiet. "You didn't know. You didn't care to know. You bet your entire future on our failure." Just then, the front door opened. "Sorry I'm late," said a voice behind them. A man in a dark suit stepped in, briefcase in hand. "Traffic. This is Leonard Wise," Tyler said. "Our attorney." Leonard gave a polite nod, then placed the briefcase on the table and opened it. He began laying out more papers, all precise and organized. "This land," he said, "is owned entirely by Stone AgTech. No liens, no mortgages, no legal obligations." "That's impossible," Dad said again. "We helped with the down payment. And were repaid in full plus interest, 18 months after purchase," Leonard said calmly. "I have the receipts right here." He slid a paper across the table. Dad didn't even pick it up. "Furthermore," Leonard continued, "any forced sale would be rejected under federal agricultural preservation laws. This site is protected." "Federal grants?" Mom whispered. "Oh yes," Tyler said. "The Department of Agriculture is supporting our work. We're working on drought-resistant crops. It could help feed millions." Derek finally spoke. "Okay, that's impressive. But it doesn't change that we're family." "Family," I said softly. "Let's talk about family." I stood up and walked over to the mantel, grabbing a graduation photo. This was the day I finished my environmental science degree. "You know what you told me that day, Dad? That it wasn't a real degree." He looked away. I picked up another frame. "Our wedding. You spent the whole reception apologizing for my choices. Aunt Susan told me later that you said you hoped I'd grow out of this farm phase." Lindsay wiped at her eyes. "We didn't mean." "You meant it. Every word. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You just assumed we'd failed." Leonard cleared his throat again. "One more thing," he said, sliding out a final document. "We've traced all the short trades on our stock. Derek's firm is responsible for over $2 million in losses. 17 clients, including your retirement accounts." "I didn't know," Derek started. "You didn't check," Leonard said sharply. "You gambled with other people's money." Dad stood up suddenly. We'll sue. For damages. You used us. Leonard smiled. Please do. I'd love to see that case in front of a jury. Lindsay looked at me, her voice breaking. What do you want from us? I looked around the room. At these people who had spent years making me feel small. And at little Sophie, clutching her mother's hand, eyes wide and confused. I want you to leave, I said. Rachel, please, Mom whispered. We're still your family. No. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated us. You only came when you wanted something. But Sophie, what about her future? That was your job to protect. Not mine. Dad stepped forward. You're really going to let us lose everything? You lost everything when you decided we weren't worth knowing. Tyler stood beside me. The meeting's over. Leonard closed his briefcase. I'll show you out. As they left, Lindsay looked back one more time. You'll regret this, Rachel. One day, you'll regret turning your back on us. I didn't flinch. No. I'll remember this as the day I finally stopped needing your approval. I watched their cars pull away through the kitchen window. The dust they kicked up faded fast, but the silence they left behind stayed. For the first time in 30 years, it felt peaceful. The quiet after they left wasn't like the usual kind. It wasn't awkward or sad or uncertain. It felt calm. Solid. Like our home had finally taken a deep breath after years of holding it in. Tyler and I stood in the living room for a while, neither of us saying anything. The air felt still, but not empty, just real. Like the storm had passed, and we were still standing. Leonard packed up his briefcase carefully, like he always did everything, with intention. As he closed the last latch, he glanced up and said, "That went about how I expected." "You've done this kind of thing before?" I asked. "Not exactly like this," he said with a small smile. "But I've seen people reveal who they really are when they're desperate. Your family showed you who they are today. Now you move forward without them." He tipped his head, polite as always, and let himself out. Tyler and I went out onto the front porch, sat down side by side like we'd done hundreds of times before. The sun was low, brushing the tops of the fields with gold. Everything looked peaceful, clean, like it had been waiting for this moment too. I picked at the edge of my shirt. "Do you think I was too harsh?" He didn't answer right away. He just traced his finger gently along the wood railing, like he was remembering something. "Do you remember what Lindsay said at our wedding?" he asked. "About us always playing in the dirt? How could I forget? I knew that day this would happen eventually. Maybe not like this, but something like it." I looked at him. "They're still my family though." "Are they?" The question lingered between us, soft and sharp at the same time. I didn't know how to answer. Maybe I didn't need to. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed on the porch rail. I picked it up and saw Megan's name on the screen. "I should take this," I said. Tyler nodded. "She's different from the rest." I answered on the third ring. "Hey, Rachel," Megan said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say." "It's okay." "No, let me talk. I knew what they were doing all these years. I saw how they treated you. I stayed quiet. I thought keeping the peace meant staying out of it, but now I see that it just made me a coward. You were stuck in the middle. I should have spoken up. I should have stood by you. And now they're spinning it. Dad's telling people you betrayed the family. Mom's crying to everyone she knows. And Lindsay, she's saying this was all some kind of setup." I closed my eyes. "We didn't set anyone up. We just stopped pretending to be small." "I know that. And I believe you, even if I didn't defend you the way I should have." She went quiet, and then, "Can you ever forgive me?" I didn't say anything right away. I looked out at the land, at the home we'd built with our own hands. Everything they used to laugh at, now they wanted. But not Megan. Not really. She was the only one who ever asked how we were really doing. "You're calling me now. That counts for something," I said. "I want to see you. Not to ask for anything. Just, I miss you. Come for dinner Sunday. Just you. No drama." "Just me," she said quickly. "I promise." After I hung up, Tyler reached over and took my hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I think he was proud of me, in that quiet way he had. One down, he said after a moment. Think any of the others will come around? I thought about it. A week ago, the idea of losing my family would have broken me. Now it just felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. No, I said. And I'm okay with that. The next morning, I was out in the garden pulling weeds when I heard a car coming up the driveway. My heart jumped a little, thinking maybe my parents had come back to make another plea. But when I looked up, it wasn't any car I recognized. A woman in jeans and a plain blouse stepped out of a small silver sedan, carrying a folder. Mrs. Stone, she called out. I wiped my hands on my pants and stood up. Yes. I'm Sarah Martinez, Department of Agriculture. I was hoping to speak with you and your husband about your drought research. Before I could answer, Tyler came out of the barn, towel slung over his shoulder. Sarah, he said smiling. Didn't expect you this early. Your preliminary results were incredible, she said, shaking his hand. We'd like to fast-track the grant approval for the next phase. Grant approval? I asked. $2.7 million over 3 years, she said. Your husband's work could change the way we approach farming in drought zones. We're talking about feeding millions. I turned to Tyler. He hadn't said anything about this. I wanted to be sure before I said anything, he said simply. As Sarah and Tyler started talking shop, timelines, data, fieldwork, I just stood there, watching them, listening, letting it all soak in. They had come to our home, demanding we give it all up to save their sinking ship. And all the while, we'd been quietly building something that might feed the world. They called us small, simple, a joke. But we were doing something that mattered. That night, Tyler and I walked through the fields as the sun went down. Same path we'd taken so many times. Only now it felt different. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about it. About my mother's tears, Lindsay's panic, Derek's silence, and little Sophie watching it all without understanding. I thought about every holiday where we were ignored, every birthday where they made snide comments, every time they made me doubt my choices. No, I said. And I meant it. No regrets. Even about your family? They made their choice a long time ago. They chose not to see us. Tyler stopped walking and turned toward me. And what do you choose? I didn't have to think. I choose us. I choose this life, this land, this work. I choose the future we're building together. He smiled, that same soft smile that had always made me feel safe. Good. Because I've got big plans for us. Bigger than a $50 million company? He looked out at the field. Much bigger. We're going to change the world, Rachel. One seed at a time. As we walked back toward the house, the stars started to show. The porch light flicked on. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Something inside me had shifted. The weight I'd carried for so long, the need to earn their approval, the fear of not being enough, it was gone. All that was left was the truth. We weren't less. We were just never theirs to measure. And now, for the first time in my life, I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was home. I was whole. I was free. And that was more than enough. It was everything.